I have 15 minutes today to try and tell you about something that's taken me almost 20 years to learn. So I really hope you're quicker learners than me, because we've got to condense 20 years into 15 minutes. What I'm going to try and tell you about is what I call the power of the now. The idea that if when you're doing an activity, you can stay in the present moment and only think about that activity, then you get the best performance possible. And the reason I talk about this is about 20 years ago, I found something that I fell in love with, apart from my wife, of course, which was endurance sports and running a long way. And what I hope to do is tell you through my journey of running and endurance sports, how I've learned that what I used to think was just the body is actually nothing without the mind. And I've only got one slide today. If any of you know my son, don't tell him I use this picture. He won't be happy that we use the picture. He says, "Dad, it'll be embarrassing." This is my son jumping across a gap at Bondi Beach. He's 12 years old. All of us know this feeling. He's flying through the air, arms out wide, and he's hoping he's going to land on the other side of that gap. Now, even though he's my son, I don't know exactly what he's thinking here, but I'm pretty sure he's only thinking about jumping across that gap. There's nothing else. He can't be thinking about his schoolwork. He can't be thinking about anything else. And it's that mindset that I'm talking about. If you can get to where his head is right there, he's going to do that jump to the best of his ability. There's no doubt about that, because it's a very special activity. So it's kind of strange it took me 20 years to get here, to learn about this, because at the age of 7, my dad, who's a professor of psychology, had a computer in the house, and that was 40 years ago, and he had me hooked up and was doing brain experiments on me and my brother and my sister. And you would have thought, wow, I would have realized that if my dad in the 70s was putting wires to my head, then I would have realized that the brain was important, but I didn't. I thought, maybe like most men particularly, I think men are less sensitive or less realization of this, is that if you don't think about what you're doing, you don't do it as well. And it wasn't until I was about 28 and living in Hong Kong that a guy in the office stood up, a guy called Justin Hodge. And I'll never, you have these moments in your life when something strikes you. This guy stood up in the office and said, "I'm going to run a 100K, a 100-kilometer race. Who wants to do it with me?" And something in my mind went, yes, that'll be fun. I don't exactly know why. And the funny thing was, Justin looked around the room and he went, "Ned, do you want to do it?" And I hadn't even said anything. I just sat there. And I'm like, "Yeah, I do." And off we went. And that first 100K run, I learned a lot. I learned nothing about the brain. All I learned was, number one, 100K is a long way. I told you, I'm not a quick learner. I'm not a quick learner. Number two, you learn I won't go through numbers, but you learn what to eat on 100K. Because you can't run 100K without eating. You learn what to wear. Let me tell you, wearing a normal t-shirt and cotton shorts for 100K, it's not a good outcome. You learn what backpack to wear. You learn how to pace. You also learn a fascinating thing, that in the world of certainties, 1K at the beginning and 1K at the end, they do not feel the same. Let me tell you. That's for sure. They're different, but they're not, are they? And so I ran 100K and we had a great time, and it was, I don't know, 18 hours. And for whatever reason, I really enjoyed it. So I kept on doing this kind of activity. And that first 100K was we just did it. I didn't really think about it. We just did it. We did a bit of training. We got out and we did it. We did okay. And so that was in 98 or something, maybe early 95. And I kept doing it. I kept enjoying it. I ran a long way and kept doing this kind of activity. And then in 2003, I moved to Singapore. And then in 2006, I had this idea that I want to run around the country I live in. I'm lucky I live here. For all you people from Canada or America, yeah, don't ask me to come there. That's not happening. And I looked at it and I looked at a map. And I had a map in my little office. I'm like, I wonder how far that is. And this is before Google Maps. And I got a piece of string. That's 125K. Okay, I've run 100. Okay, that's cool. I can do this. Let's do it. So for the next few months, I would, at a weekend or before work, I'd go and run a little bit, mark out the route, trying to keep to the coast as much as possible. In Singapore, there's only so much you can run right on the coastline. And then in February 2006, I used the Fullerton Hotel as my gym, because my office was right next door. Turned up there at 4 in the morning, changed into my gear, and at 5 a.m. I started running. And at the end of this run, I learned something. But it's only because of the journey I went through. So the first 30K you run, whenever I say this, people say it's not easy to run 30K. But if you're running 125, 30K is easy. So the first 30K, I'm like, yay, this is easy. It started raining, songs in my head, la, la, la. 30 to 70 is the hardest by such a long way. Because the reality is you haven't achieved anything. When you run from 30K to 70K and you're running 125, if you stop at 60, I hate to use the word failed, but you didn't really achieve it. And you can't say to yourself, oh, I've almost finished. Yay, I'm almost at the end. And you haven't come far enough, but you're really tired. But you haven't done anything, and it's a really weird feeling. At 70K, I met my family. They were waiting for me up at Cranji, and they give you love and affection and say, yay, well done, and that gives you a boost. It gives you an emotional boost. It starts you going. And so I got going again. I felt okay, 70K, I've been going for 10, 11 hours. You run down the northwest coast, down from Cranji, run down. A friend ran with me, and he talked to me, and he's a guy I ran the 100K race with, so he knew what was going through my mind. And then at 100K, I was down by Jurong, at the far west coast of Singapore. And my friend had gone, family wasn't there, it was dark, I'd run 100K. And I thought, I'm just gonna stop, that's it, I'm done. And I really don't have much interest in this anymore. There's no one there, like it's not like I was in a race, it's not like, I'm gonna get sacked from my job or my family will love me any less or anything will change. I'll wake up the next day, I'll still be sore whether I run 100K or 125. And then I thought to myself, and this was, I suppose, the start of the realization that it's the mind, not just the body. I thought to myself, how about I don't think about the 25K I've got to go? How about I just think about that next step? How about I just think, okay, take one step, okay, that's done. Let's take the next step, okay, that's done. And at some point, you'll get 25K done. And it sounds cheesy and you just take one step at a time, but that's what happened. And 18 hours later, I'd found myself back at the Fullerton Hotel. My wife was there, and the family was there, and you feel this amazing difference. What's the difference between 100 and 125K? These arbitrary things we set up for ourselves. I'll run round Singapore. What if I'd run 90% round Singapore? It's still the same, isn't it? But it's not. But what I learned in that thing was that last 25K, I did with this. I didn't do with this. And yes, I ran, but I didn't do with that. But I couldn't quite put my finger on it. I tried to explain it to somebody. I'm like, yeah, like I just didn't think about it, or I stopped thinking, or I had another Coca-Cola. I couldn't really put my finger on what it was that had changed in my mind. And anyway, I carried on doing other long-distance stuff, and there's a fairly strange bunch of people. We have a little chat group, guys who run hundreds of miles, 150 miles, believe me. They're like, what, you only ran 50 today? What's wrong with you? And you start to think of things in a different way, So you find, believe me, there's the crazies out there. There's some people who run a long way. Anyway, I found something called Ironman. Ironman is like a long triathlon. It's a 3.8 kilometer swim, it's a 180 kilometer bike, and it's a 42 kilometer run, all in one go. And it's a race. The difference with this thing, it's a race. Everyone's out there, alpha males, alpha females, everybody's out there, fastest bike, fastest everything, trying to kick your butt. And it became an addiction. It became an absolute addiction. And I think Ironman's a wonderful thing, but believe me, for any of you who know an Ironman out there, it's addictive stuff. And when you get addicted to something, you want to take it to an extreme. And the extreme in Ironman is the Hawaii Ironman. It's a race in Kona in Hawaii that is the World Championships. And it's once a year, it's the World Championships, it's in Hawaii, and to get there, you go to an Ironman race somewhere in the world, and you try to qualify being in the top 2 or 3% of your age group. So you have to go and beat everyone else to get the one. It's like Charlie in the Chocolate Factory, you get the one golden ticket, and you get to go to Hawaii, and everyone's there, and it's so exciting, And the next 3 years, I tried really hard, and I got close, but I just couldn't do it. And I looked at my times, and my times were like, okay, I should be able to do this, but I would come top 10%, and that's okay, it's fine, But I was half an hour, I was an hour behind the guys, and it really, it starts to bother you, And it was getting a bit dispiriting until a friend of mine said, you should talk to this guy. And I said, well, who's this guy? He said, he's a coach, he's a bit weird. You're a bit weird. You should talk to him. And believe me, so I have changed from a cynical person. I think someone else in their presentation, forgive me who it was, put up, if you can't measure it, it doesn't exist. I used to be so like that. If it's not real, all of this mindfulness and thoughts, and I was absolutely not. You want to run faster? Run faster. You want to swim faster? Swim faster. That was it, nothing else. So I found this guy, Grant, and he said to me, okay, look, I'll train you for Hawaii. Here's what you need to do. I'm going to give you physical training and mental training. Every week you're going to get 5 pages of mental training. And I'm like, okay. And he said to me this, and something connected back to my Singapore when I ran that last 25 Ks. He said, because if you don't use your mind, you are never going to Hawaii, ever. And it was, I think, and a lot of people didn't sign up with Grant because of this, because people were like, that's just silly. Just run faster, you'll get there. But something about my Singapore run made me think, okay, that makes sense. And rather than read you out the whole 5 pages of what he sent me every week, it came down to this. And this is the simplest philosophy, and it made me realize, wow, he's right. When you're running and you're doing an activity, let's say I'm running, if I'm in the middle of a race and I'm thinking about how far I have to go, and I'm thinking, oh, okay, I've got 10K to go, I've got to catch that guy ahead, or I'm thinking, geez, I've come a long way, I'm tired, that's been a long way, I can't be thinking about what I'm doing. If I'm thinking ahead or I'm thinking behind, I can't be thinking about what I'm doing. And if I'm not thinking about what I'm doing, how can I be doing the best of what I'm doing? I'm like, okay, that makes sense. I get that. Seems obvious, but it seems what he said. So you're going to concentrate on the now. So he gave me one task. I'm going to get you to do it. And you're going to think, wow, he's going to get me to run 100K. This is going to take more than 15 minutes, you know? And, but it won't. He said to me this, right, here's how you're going to do it. Simple stuff. When you run, you're going to count your footsteps. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. It took me a month to get to 10. I told you I wasn't very smart. 1 month to get, and I'm like, but here's the thing. When you count to 10, no other thought in your mind. Nothing else. Just the number. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10. Okay? So when I say now, in your heads, don't say it out loud, in your heads, see if you can count to 10 and don't think, I'm at the TED talk, what am I doing this afternoon, when this guy going to shut up, all this kind of stuff. Let's just see if you can count to 10 from when I say now. Okay? Now. Okay, now try 2,000, because that's my record. That's the best I ever did, with no other thought coming in my head. I did a run, and I was nothing else. And when I looked down at my watch, I'd gone further and faster than I thought. I was like, what happened there? Because I'd only been thinking about running. I hadn't been thinking about anything else, and it was that. I was suddenly like, wow, okay, I get it, that's how it works. So I went forward with this, went to try and qualify Hawaii, went to an Ironman. I'd done many Ironmen and never got there. Went to Ironman Korea. I'm an average swimmer. I swam okay. I kept in the moment. I swam okay. 3.8K. I biked 180K. Took me like 5.5 hours. Trying to stay in the moment. I mean, it's really hard to stay in the moment the whole time. Somebody goes past you, something happens. And then I got off the bike and somebody said to me something I wish I never had. So in this race, in my age group, there was 250 people and there was 11 slots to Hawaii. 11 golden tickets with Charlie in the chocolate factory to go to Hawaii. And I wanted one. And when I got off the bike, somebody said to me, you're in 33rd. I went, oh my God, that's rubbish. I'm not going to do this. And for the first 1 or 2K, I'm like, and I suddenly ran, I'm like, no, stop. If I'm thinking about the goal, you're not thinking about what you're doing. I'm like, okay, good, stop. Stop thinking about this, just think about running. And when I got to the halfway point, about 21K to go, I was only in 25th, because I'd passed like 8 people. I'm like, okay. And I remember this thing that Grant had said to me. He said, that's it, right now. The halfway point of the marathon, you stop thinking about everything else and you run as hard as you can with every step that you can. That's all you're going to do. You're not going to think about where you're going to get to, and you're not going to think about where it is. You're just going to do that. And luckily, the video we saw with the lady earlier on, who said this did not have a good ending when she talked about her going through therapy. I didn't go to therapy. It does have a good ending in that at the 15K mark, I was in 22nd. At the 10K mark, I was in 17th. At the 5K mark, I was in 15th. At the 1K mark, I was in 13th. And at 400 meters to go, I passed a guy who will never forgive me. He's actually a friend of mine. And I passed him, and I got 11th spot. And when I finished, I realized that I couldn't remember that whole last 20K, because all I'd done was thought about what I was doing. That's the only thing that I'd thought about. And it was that real, I was like, wow, that's so cool. And so I then looked at the time, what I'd run that last 20K in. And it was pretty much faster than, not everybody in the race, there was pros and whatever, but I ran the last 20K faster than the first 20K. At the end of a 10-hour day, you run faster. And I ran faster than people who are faster than me. Guys I know who are faster than me. And that's when I realized, okay, so what I did was I concentrated every bit of my effort. And this will all have, don't worry, I'm not going to ask you to run 100K. And at the end of this talk, you'll realize how this might be able to relate to you able to do it. So then I realized that it can improve your performance. But I also had 2 events that made me realize that you can use it for everyday life as well. Well, when I'm going to say everyday life, I'm talking about a 1,000K ride across Mongolia and another Ironman, which is maybe not everyday life for everybody, but I used it in 2 circumstances where I wasn't doing my best, where I really wasn't doing well, and where I actually had to use my mind just to get through it. When I got my golden ticket to Hawaii, what happened was, I've lived in Asia for 25 years. I've eaten at every food stall, at every place, and I have never got sick. It's just the way it is. I've lived in every country. And Singapore, cleanest place in the world, 4 days before the race, flew on Tuesday night, I got food poisoning. I got real sick, real sick. And the race was on Saturday. And so you fly from Singapore to Hawaii with that amazing effect. You leave on Tuesday, you arrive almost on Monday. It's bizarre. And then I arrived and I couldn't eat for 4 days. Couldn't eat, couldn't drink, couldn't do anything. 4 days before the biggest race of my life, and I couldn't eat, I couldn't drink, I couldn't do anything. And then the night of the race, you know, you have these 2 little things, and like, oh my God, you shouldn't race, this is wrong, or the little voices, this is the only time you're ever going to get to race. And I knew I wouldn't be able to achieve my goal. My goal was a certain time, but I used the same mind technique. I said to myself, okay, you're going to race, you're going to go out there, you're going to be slow, but you're going to enjoy this. And you're going to just think about every moment. You're not going to think this is so unfair. You're not going to think this is, you know, I've tried all my time and I've got a bad outcome. So I spent the whole time just thinking, okay, I'm going to stay in each moment. I'm going to swim slowly. I'm going to bike slowly. I'm going to run slowly today because that's all I can do. And I used that same concept, that same idea. So even though it was my slowest Ironman and it wasn't the day I wanted, it was an amazing experience, which strangely enough I remembered quite clearly because I tried to enjoy every moment rather than to race every moment. And that was the same idea of using the mind. And then I had a really strange experience with it. I've been telling you, and I was saying to Ben when I first gave the talk, people who run 100 miles and 100K, you're not meant to talk about it. You're not meant to boast about it. You're not meant to say it. It's a world of people who just kind of, you know, don't really talk about it. They just go out and they run. And I've been talking about trying to qualify for Hawaii World Championships. I went to Mongolia to do a 900K, well, almost a 1,000K race across Mongolia. 7 days on mountain bikes across Mongolia, and it's an amazing country, across the wilds of Mongolia. And it was on a mountain bike. I'm not very good at mountain biking. And the 70 other guys were some of the best amateur mountain bikers in the world. And on most days, I was last. And it was a really unique experience. It was unique being in Mongolia, but it was unique trying to tell yourself, even if you're last, even if you're doing an activity that you're not familiar with, it's not an activity that you do every day, what I found in Mongolia is if you still concentrate and do it, enjoy each moment and focus each moment, then you'll do it better than you thought. And it came home to me one day when we had a 170K day. It was taking me maybe 11 hours. The first 80K was through sand this deep. I don't know if you've ever ridden a bike through sand. In Mongolia, when you're last, your brain starts to deteriorate. The sand feels this deep, and actually, for a long time, I wasn't last until this 65-year-old dude cycled past me. And I remember I was like, you know, it's still, you got that stupid male ego. You're like, really? And I'm looking back for this other dude who should be behind me, and he wasn't there, you know. And I'm like, and on this day, we did 80K, and then we passed where the camp for that night was, and you couldn't, literally, you passed the camp, it was right there. Your tent was right there. And you had to do another 100K loop in the sand. And I'm last. And I remember thinking, wow, okay, this is, I didn't think this is not fun, but your mind, and I actually got off my bike and I stood next to my bike and I put it here and I looked at the tent, looked at your bike, looked at the tent, looked at your bike. You're thinking, okay, what do I need to do? And it came back to that same point, a little, you know, again, I was always cynical about gurus, but a little message from Grant was like, get on your bike, turn one pedal, see what happens. Just get on your bike, turn one pedal. That's it, that's all I want you to do. Then turn the next pedal. 7 hours later, I'm back at the camp, you know. You take that long to go all the way around. So what I've tried to do is to give you an idea that when you're doing your activity, and look, I've used my activities in endurance sports to try and communicate that. I understand it's not everybody's cup of tea. It doesn't matter what activity. Next time you do an activity you love and you're passionate about, try to only think about that activity. Try not to think of, try counting to 10. I won't ask you for a show of hands. How many of you here got to 10? Don't Don't tell me. Without thinking about something else. It's not easy. And I'll leave you with this last thought. And it's this. And it was something I've started doing mindfulness because I feel if I'm going to talk about this kind of stuff, I should know about it. And the lady crystallized it exactly. And this is my last sentence, and then I'm finished. You know, when you're thinking about something that you didn't do, you regret it, the coulda, shoulda, woulda. Wish I'd done that. Oh, I didn't do this. Or didn't invest in that, didn't learn that, didn't talk to that person. Or you think, I wonder what I'm going to do tomorrow. I wonder about all of that. They don't exist. The past is gone. It doesn't exist. The future, it doesn't exist. The only thing that exists is now. And she said to me this, so if you're not living in the now, you're not really living. And I was like, okay, that makes sense. How hard is it to do? Very. I'm not asking you to do it all the time. Just try it. Next time you're doing your favorite activity, have a little thought, see if you can count to 10. That's your challenge for the day. Thank you very much.